So, teenage rebellion, 1950s USA, is it something that's true, or is it not so much? Well, what do you need to know about the stereotypical teenager from the 1950s in the USA? Well, the first thing to know is things seem to have changed since before this period, and maybe the most notable is the word teenager. It wasn't really widely used until the 1950s, but suddenly up come this group of people that have, maybe essentially more than anything else, a bit more money than they'd ever had or that previous generations at their age had had in the past. And it was estimated that young people had $10 to $15 to spend a week. So this means businesses honed in on young people, and not just businesses. There were also cinema. Cinema tried to create these teenage role models. Older people, the older generations, were a bit upset about these role models. They didn't think they were the right role models. People like Marlon Brando or James Dean, who big film, you see it in the book, Rebel Without a Cause. They weren't acting as the older generations wanted the young people to act, but that just made them more appealing. If old people don't like something, that sort of puts a stamp on it, making it cool and makes people want to do it more. It's the same with rock and roll music. Elvis Presley, you might know him. Oh. Well, he was influential in the 1950s. His shaking hips was something that older people disapproved of, but young people went mad for it. And with all of the money that they did have to spend, a lot of them spent much of it on going to the cinema and on music. Television was right in the home, and television had another impact on young people. They saw the world outside. They saw not just the world just outside their front door, and they thought they could see options that are available to them. They could see other places. It made young people, in some cases, a little bit more ambitious. They wanted maybe to travel to different cities, go around the United States, go after the things they wanted, not the things their parents wanted for them. This all seems kind of innocent, and maybe the older people were blowing things out of proportion. And yes, maybe they were. But an important thing in the book was gang violence. And as it says here, in 1956, the numbers of murders carried out by teenagers in New York rose by 26% over the previous year. Now, that could be an anomaly, maybe of that 1 year, but that does seem to suggest that some young people in some areas were a little bit out of control. In fact, a psychologist called Frederick Wortham, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, he said that comic books were one reason for the violence involved in youth culture in the 1950s. But mostly it's the poor role models that people pointed to, as well as people, especially women, going out to work. Women were blamed for the behaviour of young people, and in fact the Senate was so concerned with young people's behaviour that it held hearings on delinquent teenage behaviour throughout the decade. Now, this was largely as a result of the work of the media, which tended to blow things out of all proportion. It's a great story. Young people rebelling and causing carnage. People are likely to pick up the newspaper and buy it on that basis, and they did. Especially because of the story of the majority of young people who just kind of got on with things and didn't really rebel at all. They're not interesting, so they're not making it into the newspaper, so they're kind of left to one side, and this made the whole problem seem a lot bigger than really it was. And you can see that from the bottom of the sheet that I've given you, which says that young people still got married really early. A lot of the men ended up being drafted into the armed forces in the 1950s. Now, all these things show that young people were out causing mayhem in the streets. Just like most generations, perhaps, there were some idiots who did go around doing stupid things. But that may be no different to years before or years afterwards. Maybe it was just the rise of the media where this could be shown, or the fact that young people had a little bit more money to spend so they could go places, a bit more independence. So there we go.